Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. As the terrorist army ISIS continues to attack and kill the Christian minority, Middle Eastern Christian leaders of all stripes gathered in Washington this week for the In Defense of Christians Conference. The three-day summit brought together lawmakers, lay people, and clergy in an effort to raise awareness and spur action to stop what many are calling a religious genocide in Iraq, Syria, and the rest of the region. New Jersey Congressman Chris Smith participated in the conference and convened a hearing on the topic this week. He joins us from Capitol Hill to update us on what he learned. Congressman Smith, thank you as always for being here.
Thank you very much, Raymond.
Now, in your opening remarks during that hearing, you referenced this genocide against Christians. Is that what it is, and why the reluctance to call it that by the administration and some in the global community?
It's a great question, Raymond. I held a hearing last year on Syrian Christians being killed simply because they are Christians. It clearly rises to the definition of genocide in the Genocide Convention, whole or in part, the extermination of a group, and people are being killed simply because they are Christians. If that word is used, it does require a much more robust response on the part of the international community, including the United States of America, and why the administration has been reluctant. We had the same kind of reluctance during the killing of so many Christians in South Sudan. And again, the UN and the international community refused to brand it for what it was, a genocide. And because we do have to do more. There has been an indifference, a callous disregard on the part of President Obama for years, not months, years, as it relates to those who have been suffering. I do believe that Secretary Kerry is trying. He has tried to cobble together what was he inherited huge problems of indifference from the previous Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, and I do think he's trying to put it all back together. But it's always too late, a day late and a dollar short, so to speak. So it's very troubling. This could have been mitigated, maybe not stopped completely, but mitigated had effective action been taken, and of course, pulling the American troops out prematurely when our generals and our high-ranking military brass said there needed to be a residual force for training so that the Iraqis themselves could defend themselves. That was an engraved invitation for ISIS to stand up and do the terrible deeds and atrocities they're doing today.
Now, Chris Smith, we are now hearing from President Obama just this week in a nationally televised address to the nation that we are going to have these targeted airstrikes in Syria, in Iraq, and we are going to train the, quote, moderate rebels in Syria. Are you confident that that can happen, and how do you identify who moderate rebels are in Syria?
Another excellent question, Raymond. In terms of the airstrikes, I do believe they're necessary. There has to be a degrading of the ability of ISIS to kill, maim, torture, rape, and all of the other horrific things that they're doing. But that said, it was several years ago that if there was going to be a potent force of people trained to fight against Assad, who truly wanted a free Syria, it needed to be done then. Even President Obama, just a few weeks ago, said that it was like Pollyannish to think that somehow you could train up people to fight against the Assad regime. So my belief is it is probably far too late. I've asked the question repeatedly, including of people in CIA in closed briefings, how do you vet? Who is it that you're giving these sophisticated weapons to, as well as the training? You don't know who they are. Look at the people that guarded our embassy or our mission, I should say, in Benghazi.
Benghazi, yeah.
As soon as they attacked, they dispensed or they became they flipped, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we've seen that in Iraq. We've seen it in Syria. We should remind people, this ISIS didn't spring up from the ether. It came from disaffected forces in the Iraqi military, some of whom we trained and equipped with weaponry. Now they're ISIS agents, and we've seen the same dynamic in Syria. So does that concern you now, the president asking for hundreds of millions of dollars to train these people who could very well be the next wave of recruits for ISIS?
No, I think your point is very well taken. This president has not led with the kind of dedication, focus, information, intelligence. Where was the intelligence that would have caught this huge swath of land and the use of people to kill and maim, like I said, when ISIS went on its rampage, which it still is on? Why didn't we know before? We were caught by surprise. Are you kidding me? There has been an indifference by this administration, especially the president. When James Foley was beheaded and the president made his statement and then went right back to the golf game, that showed a lack of seriousness of intent that I find absolutely appalling. And I think Americans should be concerned about this. I'm not sure how the polls are driving any of this. You know, many of us feel that there's a credibility gap with President Barack Obama. We've seen it in virtually every policy from Obamacare. If you like your doctor, you can keep it. There will be no abortion in it. It'll abide by the Hyde Amendment. That turned out to be absolutely untrue. In instance after instance, he has not followed the letter nor the spirit of the law. Many of us have talked about the lawlessness of this administration, making it up as they go along. How are we to believe when the president comes forward and in his now role as commander-in-chief and wearing that hat tells us what it is that we have to do? There's a huge credibility gap. I'm hoping for the sake of those who are suffering that we do the right thing, but I'm not sure how we think we can train up people and how you vet people. You know, look into their background. We don't know who these people are.
No, everybody's a rebel, and everybody's kind of going at cross purposes until they're organized by ISIS, and then they move in one direction. I want to switch gears.
Remember
go ahead. I want to play a bite for you. This is President Obama from this week, and he is trying to help the American people understand who ISIS is and is not. Listen.
Now let's make two things clear. ISIL is not Islamic. No religion condones the killing of innocents, and the vast majority of ISIL's victims have been Muslim. And ISIL is certainly not a state. It is recognized by no government, nor by the people it subjugates. ISIL is a terrorist organization, pure and simple.
Chris Smith, do you agree with that understanding of who and what ISIL is?
You know, Raymond, I'm baffled by the reluctance of this president to call a radical Islamist terrorist organization radical Islamists. Those who take the misguided view and distort and pervert the Quran, whether they be Boko Haram or any other group around the world. I was just, as you know, recently in Abuja in Nigeria. Boko Haram is on a tear. And they are claiming, and I believe falsely, but it is a radical Islamic group, that this is what God's will is, to kill and to rape and to forcibly cause people to convert to Islam. But to say it's not Islam when they themselves have it in their title and quote the Quran ad nauseum it's bewildering as to why he insists on that. We need to encourage moderate Muslims, and there are many, and they do get targeted, whether it be in Nigeria or the Middle East, and killed, to stand up and say there is no room in Islam for this horrific type of behavior. But don't say it's, you know, it's not an Islamic organization.
There's some abstract terrorist organization. I mean, the radical Islamic bent.
This is what's being taught in some of these madrasas and some of these mosques. Let's not remember 9/11. We're remembering 13 years later the terrible killings there. They were radical Islamists, extremists. Why are we afraid to call it that?
Let's talk for a moment about the president's plan. Part of it is basically airstrikes, training people on the ground, but he says no troops. We will not put any boots on the ground. Truth of the matter, we've got 1,000 military personnel already on the ground in Iraq.
Yes, right,
they're just in the embassy. Your thoughts on how credible or real that plan is? Can you do this without putting boots on the ground and secure the place?
Well, I hope the airstrikes work. I hope and pray that they work. I do think that there are other non-lethal ways that have not been embraced. I've been pushing for well over a year that a regional war crimes tribunal be stood up like we had in Yugoslavia, Sierra Leone, and Rwanda. I actually had David Crane, who was the chief prosecutor at the Sierra Leone War Crimes Tribunal, testify, and he was brilliant. He put some of the worst genocideers, the killers, including Charles Taylor, the former president of Liberia, behind bars for 50 years in that instance. That can have a chilling effect. It's only one of several things that ought to be done, but I do hope this plan, if there is one, again, the president has a credibility gap.
Last night, the president said, we cannot do this for the Iraqis. They have to do it themselves, so we're going to train them. Didn't we already try this routine? I mean, we've done this, and it collapsed.
Great. But here was the problem. We pulled our trainers out, and he declared victory and said it was all over. The democracy would flourish now in Iraq. And our military personnel, our intelligence personnel said, Mr. President, don't do that. You know, just not forget, in Korea, we still have large numbers of troops who work side by side with the South Koreans. We did the same thing, particularly in Western Germany, post, obviously, World War II, for decades. And they were part of command and control and making sure that troops were well-trained, disciplined, and knew how to effectively carry out counterterrorism activities. When we left prematurely, it left a vacuum, and I would respectfully submit it also created an invitation for a group like ISIS to form, realizing that we had vacated the premises, and in came this horrific radical Islamic terrorist group. We should have kept, you know, there were different estimates, but upwards of 23,000 down to 10. The numbers really should be prescribed by our military commanders. What would be the remnant force that would make the difference? And you know, it was John McCain, our former POW and a very distinguished senator, who from the very beginning was pretty much shouting from the rooftops that we needed to keep that residual number of trainers to preserve the gains and the peace that our men and women suffered so terribly for, who now walk missing limbs, many died, securing that freedom for the Iraqis.
Let's talk about the politics of this for a moment. Now the president is asking for congressional authorization. There is talk in the GOP Congress, the ruled House, that this will be attached to a spending bill. But the House, the GOP House, is divided. You were in that meeting this morning. What are you hearing? Why the division? And is attaching authorization to a spending bill the way this should go, where you don't know who voted for what?
Well, it depends. If there's an up or down vote and a separate vote, at least there's accountability. And again, I think we all need to hear more about the plan. I am very concerned about giving a blanket authorization to a president who has shown time and time again to operate outside the parameters of law. As I said before, I have never seen in my 34 years as a member of Congress such lawlessness on the part of a president. And I want to be able to say just the opposite, that, you know, he is the president, commander-in-chief, we rally behind him. But there has been so many instances where he has not followed the rule of law that we're not sure what will he do now with an authorization. So I'm looking at it very carefully to see how open-ended it is. And again, I think there should be a separate vote, if we have one, that everyone can, you know, be held to account for how they cast their ballot.
Congressman Smith, before I let you go, you saw those patriarchs this week that came to D.C. A few were going to testify for you. Others met at the White House, and they had their conference, of course. What do you think might be the impact of having all those patriarchs speaking with a single voice, crying to the president that something needs to be done here to protect this fledgling minority?
Well, I am so glad they came to Washington. I think they provide a rallying point for the Congress, the President, Europe, who does take note of this as well, and all freedom-loving people, that there is a genocide that's occurring right before our very eyes. They spoke eloquently. I went to the large meeting that was held yesterday. I actually spoke at it. Yeah. I've known many of them for a long time, and they are speaking for their beleaguered flock in a way that only they can do it. And to have men of such caliber and of such faith and knowledge telling us this has to stop, that is a very serious game changer and a real mover for all of us.
Congressman Chris Smith, thank you so much for being here, and we'll be in touch with you.
Raymond, thank you very much.
Thank you. And we also want to remember all of those who lost their lives on September 11th, this 13-year anniversary of that tragic event. Our prayers and hearts are certainly with their families, not only the firefighters and the military people, but the innocent civilians who were killed in that tragedy. What a day that was.